Let's get into the news. We're gonna go again, kind of quick through these. But first off, John Lithgow. You remember John Lithgow? He's from like Third Rock from the Sun and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, such an awesome actor.
So he's set to play Dumbledore for HBO's Harry Potter series. This cast is looking pretty good for this Harry Potter series, but he's an American actor. He has played a British character a few times in the past. What do you think about him playing such an iconic British role?
Yeah, I think it'll definitely be. I mean, he's got the acting chops. I don't doubt that. So it may be a little bit of a stretch for him because it doesn't seem like an easy fit. When you see his other characters that he's well known for, you just wouldn't say that's Dumbledore. It's just kind of out there for him. But I think he can handle it. I think he can do it. I imagine, though, I don't know. I haven't read the Harry Potter books, so I'm sure there's more depth to the character than what we've seen in the other Harry Potter movies. But I'm wondering if there's a little bit of a quirkiness to him. John Lithgow could definitely exploit that and play that version of the character a lot better, I think. But I don't know. Do you know more about Dumbledore from any of the books or anything like
that? From the books, no. I assume that they're going to bring in the stuff that they have said that they're going to bring in everything from the book. So they're going to be telling the entire story over 10 years. So they're going to have time to pull everything, probably add things that are not even in the books, but they're definitely using all of it. So I think that we're going to have more Dumbledore than we had in the past. And John Lithgow played Winston Churchill for the Crown series and did an excellent job of like the old British guy. So even if he wanted to just play it straight like that, like just an old British guy with no whimsy at all, I think he could. But John Lithgow, when he plays Arch, when he adds a little bit of that villainy in his voice, is so fun. So I'm really hoping they let him kind of play around with that.
That'd be cool. And Dumbledore is more like warm though, right? He's regal and a mentor, but also very personable, isn't he? With Harry?
I get the vibes of he is, but underneath it, he's also a little rebel, you know?
Yeah, okay.
Like the Ministry of Magic's always like, here are the rules. And he's always like, hey, Harry, here's a time turner, go start some mischief for me and stuff like that. Like he's got his little army. Yeah. And so I think something like that John Lithgow could really play with and have fun. Yeah. So that's good.
That'd be cool.
Rings of Power has been renewed. So this is up from the air. I know people were like, oh, it's going to definitely come back. It didn't necessarily hit as hard as it's supposed to, but it has been renewed. And what they're doing this time is they're going to do a time jump and jump right into the war of the elves, humans, and dwarves versus Sauron. Have you been watching Rings of Power, John?
No, but I think when it started, I didn't have Prime, and I have it now. So I think it's time to binge it and get caught up.
Unfortunately for me, it doesn't grab me like House of the Dragon does and Game of Thrones did. Yeah. I don't know what it is. I think the dialogue is a little bit too high fantasy, where it's a lot more like, well, it's Lord of the Rings, right? It's Lord of the Rings speech. And I love me some arguing over a thing of wine in Game of Thrones, Yeah. And so it just hasn't grabbed me yet. But
does it have like a deep dramatic backstory, or is it just do you think the writing is just a little too light for what you're looking for?
I would not say dramatic. It is very, very high fantasy. Like the backstory of all the stuff is like, oh yeah, I fought this war against him, 2,000 years ago when I was training as an elf here. Everything is kind of that way. There is no, I can't even think of like scandals necessarily that would be, I can't really think of a high scandal. I know that one of the villains, he has a bit of a scandal because he's like, was part of Sauron and then he leads the orcs on his own. But that was pretty weak. It was not in comparison to everything else. And I just don't know if Lord of the Rings lends itself to TV shows very well. I think it's better for those big movies because it's all about the big battles and stuff too.
Yeah, that's a shame. It sounds like they need to work on their writing, like the actual translating the book to the screen. It takes a little bit of work. We've seen it in other stuff where they massage it a little bit and make it fit better, but hopefully season 3 is taking a turn in a better direction, I guess.
With it doing a time jump and jumping right into a battle, it feels like they're like, look, we just got to put the money into this and get this thing into a big war immediately. Yeah. I talked to a couple of friends. Alma reacts on TikTok, guys. Check her videos out. But she was saying she expected it to be renewed and expected it to do a time jump because the next thing that happens in the story would be that. So, there's plenty of time, but like it's just preamble of getting ready for war. The next actual event is, okay, let's jump into war. And even House of the Dragons just confirmed this week as well that when they come back, it'll be in the middle of the bloodiest war, which I knew that because of the book. But they're like appeasing people who didn't know what happened, why all of a sudden it ended with nothing at the end of season 2. And like, well, it's because all the budget's in the beginning of season 3 with 2 gigantic wars. And it's like, okay, but you got a lot of promise you just made,
Yeah, I was still so disappointed at the end of the season. You spent the entire episode teasing at this fight is going to start the entire episode, and then it didn't start, and you have to wait for the next season.
Yeah.
Come on, that's
which is in 2026.
such a letdown. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So long away. So yeah, Rings of Power is coming back, guys. Let's we got to make sure to give it a shot, everybody. Give it the support we want it to get. We want it to be successful. It's worth it. Netflix is developing their own fantasy series. Now, we originally had talked about this when when Paramount Plus was trying to do it. Paramount Plus couldn't make it actually happen, so Netflix bought the rights to it. Dungeons and Dragons: The Forgotten Realms. It's a live-action series set in Dungeons and Dragons. Since the last time we talked about this, Jonathan, you are now a D&D player. So with your knowledge in D&D at this point, what is it that you would want to see out of a D&D series? Again, remember, you're not just for the fans. You got to go for the mainstream people too.
Yeah. Geez, what would you want to see to make it mainstream? I mean, so if you can kind of teach, you need a world build to me, because the game is so free, I guess. It's ever changing. It kind of, we build it as we play, but there is rules and there is a foundation that it's built on. So I think if you really explain that foundation, then the rest of the story can be almost anything. I mean, you obviously have to still write a fun story,
right?
But I think having those core like anchors in the ground is going to be pivotal, a big part to actually making it believable.
Yeah. So the movie, I thought, did a pretty good job with that, right? It was like, this is the Dungeons and Dragons world. We're going to tell a small story that fits within it, and the rules apply. Would you want them to do something similar to that? Or a lot of the comments are wanting to actually pull from the actual books. Like, there are books you could use as a DM to run your campaign. And like in our current campaign, we are kind of half using one book and I'm half making up the rest of it. Would you think that that's better for them, and like at least we have source material?
I think that, I mean, like that would be like following a comic book, right? We've seen great success in that, but we've also seen where they stick a little bit too strictly to the comic book, and it doesn't do good on screen. So I think you could use the D&D books as the source material, but it still needs to be well adapted to the screen. Or the mainstream audience won't care for it. So, and you might be better off just having, movie writers write the story, and but they have to study what it's going to be built into, the type of world and the rules and stuff like that it's going to be in. But this seems like the type of thing where the story, especially being that it's a series and not just a movie, will rely so much on the characters, which is exactly what the player experience is anyways. That's your character, the building of your character, its growth is what it's all about. So, I mean, it's like it's made for a series. We are introduced to these characters and how they fit within the world around them, and then we watch them grow. And then hopefully, to make it fun and interesting, we're going to see some of them die off in dramatic scenes and stuff like that. But, as it goes on, they're going to be replaced with other ones. Maybe at the end of a season, the whole group dies off, but then the next season, we're in the same world, the same terror is terrorizing the world or whatever, and we just find a different group of people that happen to have maybe we even saw them cross paths at one point, but they were going different directions, and now it's like, okay, we're following these guys because we're still in the same world, and the players had to create new characters pretty much. That'd be kind of cool.
And there are a lot of really cool named people, a lot of named villains or whatever, like the Stroud Ranger or whatever. I think having them in the world, but not necessarily the focus of the main story, is good, so that you can follow these characters that are like you would be as a player, just randomly adventuring the world, and you'll run into all the really famous people that are in the stories. I think that's probably the most freeing way to do it, the way you can have the most flexibility. And one of the things I would really like to see, again, brought up in the TikTok comments that we were discussing this on, is make playable characters with all the people that are on this TV. So, I really like this character played by whomever, Chris Pine or whatever. And then they give you a character sheet for him too, if you want to add him in your guys' campaign. Yeah, and then that would be such a blast. You guys run into random people you like on, if you were playing, you guys just ran into 11 from Stranger Things, that kind of thing. So I think that would be a fun way to bring in the crew. Yeah, that would be cool. Yeah. Now, as a D&D player, what are some of the things that D&D can do that other TV shows don't maybe have the freedom for? For example, I'll say it. I'll start us off with, other shows have a set narrative, and the ability to kind of just invent on a fly, the DM having to do that, having this overlord and multiple like stages of, I think the openness of D&D lends itself a lot more to the creativity of the writers. One of the biggest problems with Game of Thrones is they got ahead of the writer, George R. R. Martin, and so they had to make it up. And the fans are always like, well, it's not as good as that. And then if that happens with this, it's like, yeah, that's fine though. That's just how his campaign's going. Is it's not as good as that one, but that's just how the campaign went. So you got a little bit of freedom there.
I think that's great from the view of the player. It's somebody who knows D&D, but I don't think the mainstream audience will understand that. So they'll fall off if it, you know. Yeah, even like you're saying, like, oh, you can name drop these guys that are in the books and stuff like that. That's great for us. If you recognize that name, then you get that Easter egg and you have that inside joke or whatever it is. But everybody else is turning around, looking at each other like, okay, who the heck is that guy? Why should I know by the score or something like that. I should care about that name, but I have no idea who he is. So they got to be careful doing that kind of thing. Honestly, I hate to say it, but I think we got to lean towards appeasing the mainstream just so this can continue and make the money and, you know, be on screen, exposing people to a version of D&D that might get them to take it home and play it and try it out. And then, because watching it on TV isn't nearly as fun as playing the game itself.
Absolutely.
So if you can have a whitewashed version of it that gets people's interest enough for them to try it out, that's totally worth it. I won't feel bad that it's been bastardized a little bit if it means it gets more people playing it at home, because that's where it's really at.
You guys are in such a big spot for right now for your guys' campaign. You just secured your basically fortress into hell, and we're going to be doing it not in person this next segment. So because we have a pregnancy coming up real soon. Shout out to Daniel. But yeah, that'll be interesting to see how that happens.
We have a birth coming up. The pregnancy already started.
Oh yeah, that's what I meant.
I mean, I'm trying, but it's not working.
But yeah, so you guys have this big battle coming up, and like that book in particular would be fantastic. But that's like a whole season of it where you fight off, you know, hell's, you know, armies and whatnot. So it's always exciting.
And we've talked before about my next character. I think I'm changing it again already, though, to be a little more serious of a character, not so crazy and wacky. Fit a dialogue a little easier. But I'm still excited to start another campaign at some point in the near future.
Well, we've been talking about doing multiple campaigns. That's definitely something that could happen. Yeah. And with this one, I think you guys have gotten to where you're doing death saving throws like twice, which is so light, which means I got to ramp it up a little bit. I got to throw a little more at the wall. It's hard because I can't tell when Squeaks is going to do something. Squeaks is always like trying to get everybody killed. The shit he does. There's always somebody in the group doing that. Where he's just like, I'm going to walk in front of this mirror. I'm like, you've seen the mirrors blow people up. What are you doing?
Right. Charge into the room of enemies or whatever. It's like, are you sure about that?
So it's like, I can't ramp it up too hard because he's going to pull the whole thing. Yeah. It's a little tricky. Oh, man.
It's okay. More death saving throws.
All right. HBO also confirms that they have planned 4 seasons for The Last of Us. So The Last of Us is coming back in April, which, God, I'm so ready for it.
Season 3 in April, right?
2.
Oh, okay. Dang.
I know.
I didn't realize that. So we have 3 more seasons planned. Starting with that one. That's great. So right now there are 2 games for The Last of Us. The first game covered the first season, and what we've been hearing is the second game will cover seasons 2 and 3. But we didn't know if they were going to do any more seasons. Now we know they're going to do 4. They have multiple options. Stretch the second game out even farther because they're already stretching it for 2 seasons. Stretch it for 3 seasons instead, or just make up a story that like kind of gives everybody closure for the 3rd season. And maybe they'll tell a story for a 3rd game that's not even on the horizon at all. I know you don't know The Last of Us very well, the video game version. What from this story are you wanting to see that you don't see in other zombie shows? That is a good question. I mean, what we see in most zombie shows is like you're following the same people for a while. They're facing different challenges, stuff like that. And at some point we see them die off and they're kind of handing off the torch to the next group or at least a couple people to carry it on.
Yeah.
And we see that all the time in video games too. After a couple games, a lot of times your main characters have changed. Well, sometimes, not all the time, but so that's why I'm kind of worried that if they try to continue for so many seasons, we're going to end up having to replace characters and have, you're fighting a horde of zombies. You don't last long. So yeah, I don't want to get to the point that everybody's been replaced.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's kind of, I think it'd be best if they do write a good conclusion in season 3.
Which is nice because they kind of have like a set number of seasons, so they can do that. It's not like Walking Dead where it's like, we can go to 11 if we keep pushing type of thing, and it's like, we feel it though.
Yeah, exactly. The writing gets thinner and thinner, and and I like the idea of stretching out the second game into the second game into 2 seasons, because a lot of video games you don't get as much character development as you would in a movie or TV show.
Yeah.
So to be able to spend the time getting to know the characters, the more time you spend with the character on screen, and they're diving into their backstory and everything, the more it kills you when they die, or when they're just they got one bullet left in the gun and they have to find a way to get out of that building or something like that. The stakes weigh on you a lot more when you're more invested in the characters. So I think that's a good call.
To me, one of the things that we get, like, I know this isn't technically zombies, it's a fungal thing. We never see a cure. Like, there's never a cure that successfully happens or anything like that. How nice would it be if they actually find a cure and then we see them like save the world? It's always like, we're going to start again and it's going to suck. But what if they're like, if we spray the stuff on the guys that scream at us, it fixes them. And so I wouldn't mind them figuring that out in this one.
That would be kind of cool.
Yeah.
Find an anti-fungus that you spray on animals or whatever, and as they spread, it's killing the fungus, and
get into the bird supply or something like that, and they start going crazy.
Oh, that'd be pretty cool. And they're all a network, so it'd be reasonable to think if you put an antivirus in one spot, it's going to spread across the network pretty quick.
Great point. Yeah, it's a good one.